The NBA now investigating the Philadelphia 76ers for possible violations of the player participation policy. We've got major injury news out of New Orleans, and two young stars shined for their team in debuts after season-ending injuries. LaMelo Ball, Ja Morant, who looked better in that debut? That's all coming up today on the Locked On NBA podcast. Let's get it.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And just like that, the Locked On NBA podcast has even more content for your feed and a couple of fresh faces on the feed as well. Welcome into Locked On NBA. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Doug Branson, host of the Locked On Hornets podcast, and I'll be your shot clock Sherpa as we whip around the Locked On Podcast Network's NBA podcast, breaking down the biggest NBA stories from our local experts. With me today are two of Locked On's premier national NBA experts from the Locked On Nuggets podcast and senior writer for the Action Network, Matt Moore. And from the Locked On Bulls podcast, we've got Haize. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you will get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And I want to get started with the biggest news out of the NBA right now. ESPN's Shams Charania reporting that the league has begun its investigation into the Philadelphia 76ers over possible violations of its player participation policy as it relates to the absence of Joel Embiid. Matt, should the NBA be involved in investigating NBA teams for player participation at all?
Look, I'm glad the league is trying to address load management because it's gotten a little out of hand the last couple of years. Thought last year was better in some regards, but there's got to be limits to this. Like investigating into these types of things, what are you going to prove? You're going to prove that he was able to go? You're going to prove that how he felt? Like you have to be able to leave it up to the athletes to make these type of decisions. Furthermore, oh, we're going to investigate the Sixers. Why? This is a Joel Embiid decision. I'm not blaming Joel. Do the right thing for you. You got hurt last year, missed the playoffs. The entire talk is about him being healthy for the playoffs. They've been transparent about that. And at this point, if you're trying to protect the fans and people watching, you know, hey, the Sixers are on tonight. Don't know if Joel's going to play. Like, there's no shock there. Okay? So from this perspective, there doesn't make any sense to be punishing the league, punishing the teams, rather. These decisions are more from the players than the league presents it. It's talked about as if it's like, oh, well, the staff made this decision. And the players most often make this call. And you're not going to punish Joel. You're not going to punish a guy for being hurt. You shouldn't punish a guy for being hurt. There's no point to this. I get they're trying to reinforce it. The positive stuff to try and get them to participate more. The players took that to heart. We had better participation rates last year. The problem has been mostly fixed. This is an outlier condition. The league should not be investigating the Sixers over this.
At the same time, like the Sixers, when he was playing with half his face paralyzed last year, they didn't investigate that if he should sit down. Like, I get it that you want to protect players. You want to make sure that the fans get the experience that they want. But at some point in time, what is like if Joel Embiid, who has not been able to stay healthy, if he's not able to play in any games and suffers a major injury, then what does that do for the fan experience if he just misses a season, right? At some point, you have to allow these players to do what's best for the longevity of their career. So they're playing more games than they're missing. Joel Embiid has been one of the more injury-ridden players and at key times. Do you want Joel Embiid healthy at the playoffs? Do you want when fans are paying the most money to show up to playoff games, paying ridiculous amounts of money? Do you want Joel Embiid to be healthy? He has to make the decision that's best for him. I get it. I understand that the NBA came out with these rules. You don't want healthy players sitting, but guess what? Joel Embiid is not that player. It's different when you're talking about young players and teams just sitting them just to sit them because they want to rest them on a back-to-back. Like, Joel Embiid needs this. The league needs this. 76ers need this. You need a healthy Joel Embiid.
I get it. At the same time, let them being like, well, he's ramping up.
Yeah.
What was preseason for? Like, the optics are bad. It's the first game of the season. Like, I get the optics are bad, but I'm also just like, look, you have to consider Joel Embiid to be one of one. Like, he is a different situation than everybody else, including Kawhi. Like, you just got to treat him separately almost because of the history of his injury career.
Yeah, I think all of the talk of resting on back-to-backs, I think the fact that this is the beginning of the regular season, that probably plays into this. I mean, they still want to, it seems like they would still want to maintain the integrity of the regular season, despite, I mean, I understand Haize's discussion there about playoffs and how much people pay to be, to take part in the playoffs. I understand all of that, but there's still a regular season that they have to maintain some, integrity for. Now, I'm going to bring up the other aspect of this that people have been talking about a lot, and that's gambling. How much do you think that gambling is sort of the thing that's not being talked about as a part of, making sure that not only that players play, but that there is some honesty or there is some awareness of like when a player is going to play or not play and when they're going to come back?
Yeah, I mean, look, the problem here is it's actually been better that the Sixers are doing what they're doing, saying, hey, he's going to be out for a little bit and he's not going to play in back-to-backs. Giving more heads up is better because the books and bettors are just asking for transparency. They're not asking for him to play when he's hurt. They're not asking for him to play no matter what. What they're asking for is don't have it be. And this happens a lot especially with Embiid, where it's like, yeah, no, he's good to go. He should be good to go. Up, he's out. And that's a huge problem. Or like, oh no, he's questionable. He's not going to, nope, he's in tonight. All you want, and the players get to have like, oh, I warmed up and then I tweaked something and I'm out. Like that happens. That's fine. But when it's consistent, that's when the problems start to arise. And the league, from talking to people inside the league, I know like they've had a lot of pushback with the teams from this. Like this is a tension point where the teams want complete control and want to be able to do whatever they want and hide whatever information they want. And the league's like, let's just be a little bit more transparent about it. That doesn't seem like a super high bar to clear, especially when we see how the NFL works.
All right, so the Philadelphia 76ers without Joel Embiid to open the season against the Milwaukee Bucks. They lose that game. They were also without Paul George. They lost 124-109. And Locked On Bucks host Frank Madden took heart in Damian Lillard's part in the victory. Let's take a listen to that.
Emotionally, it's very important to me to see Dame outplay Tyrese Maxey because I feel like the narrative has been so pro Tyrese Maxey because I get it. He's new, he's young, exciting. He's going to be good for a long time. And Dame, obviously, like the bar being super high for him coming into last year. And, like the numbers he put up, it's like, go compare Dame's numbers against Tyrese Maxey's numbers and then compare like what the sentiment was around their seasons. It's like, they're not going to, there's very little correlation, right? Especially when Embiid was out, like Maxey's efficiency tailed off pretty hard. And, you look at, especially his per minute numbers, like he plays an absolute ton of minutes as well, which is, to his credit. But again, does anybody complain about Tyrese's Maxey's defense the way they complain about Dame's defense? No, like they kind of let that stuff skate by.
All right, so a few grievances there. I'm interested, Haize, do you agree with either premise there from Frank, that Tyrese Maxey is unfairly praised relative to Damian Lillard, or that Dame is unfairly maligned? What do you think?
I mean, I think there's a bit of truth in both, make no mistake about it. But to say that like nobody criticizes Tyrese Maxey's defense, I have to ask them how many Sixers fans have they talked to? Because Tyrese Maxey's defense is pretty well criticized oftenly. Like, it's just that he's been so good offensively and been what that team has needed at times when Joel Embiid has gone down, that I think that they focus on what he does well. But to say that Tyrese Maxey's defense is not criticized, I don't. That's one aspect of this I don't understand. I had one of my best friends, a Sixers fan. He kills Tyrese Maxey for his defense all the time. But I also think it comes down to he gives more effort defensively than Dame. Dame falls asleep defensively at times. Tyrese Maxey, and that may be a more knock against him, the fact that he tries and is still bad defensively. But there are absolutely times that Tyrese Maxey is giving tons of effort defensively. He's small. He's not good.
I love how all of the Eastern Conference teams, their fans are just constantly like just trying to compare their guys to the other ones and tear down the other side and raise their guys up. It's so bitter. I love it. It's terrific. Love Frank, known him a long time. But like, look, we used to compare Dame to Steph. Like that was the bar that Dame was battling with. Now we're battling with Tyrese Maxey, and Maxey's awesome. Maxey is the second best player on a title contender. Like I get it. And Dame is the second best player on a title contender, but man, like how far the mighty have fallen here. The Bucks just need to worry about them getting their own stuff fixed and not worry about what's going on with the Sixers. And Bucks fans should do the same and copy that, because I'm sure the Bucks are focused on their own stuff. The other thing here is just like, look, I think Dame is primed for a bounce back season, and if he does that and he performs and they win, then guess what? People are gonna love Dame again, because Dame's a really lovable player.
All right, coming up next on the Locked On NBA podcast, we talked a lot about injuries. We're not done yet. There's a major injury out of New Orleans that we have to get to, but we're going to talk about two young stars in the NBA that are returning from their season-ending injuries to make their debut this season. LaMelo Ball, Ja Morant, who had the better debut? Find out next on the Locked On NBA podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you pay $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. In tonight's NBA action, I'm going to build a lineup that includes Victor Wembanyama, more than 11.5 rebounds. That's right, I believe in Wemby. With Nikola Jokic, less than 9 assists. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch and play along with Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA, all one word. Smush it together, LOCKEDONNBA, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA, to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, thanks again for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Make sure you're also tuning in to Locked On NBA Game Time. If you subscribe to this feed, you can wake up to our Locked On NBA experts recapping every game every day. And if you aren't subscribed to this feed, what are you waiting on? It's great. All right, so let's get into more news from last night's NBA action. Two stellar debuts from LaMelo Ball and Ja Morant. And I want to get to the Ja Morant first because we have some great insight here from the Locked On Grizzlies podcast and Joe Mullinax.
The ability of Ja Morant to finish, the uniqueness of his game, multiple acrobatic plays at and around the rim, alley-oop passes, the vision that this guy has to put his teammates in a position to be successful is truly impressive. And the fact that he is a willing and able pass-first superstar, do not underestimate that. Do not underestimate that. This guy could score 30 points a game if he wanted to, but he prioritizes getting his teammates involved because he knows that's the best lane for this team to have a chance to win, and any team to have a chance to win, to be honest with you. After the hardships of last year, obviously the suspension, the injury, only seeing Morant for 9 games, it was a lot of fun to see and be reminded of exactly what Ja Morant is capable of.
All right, Joe, they're saying he can score 30 points anytime he wants to. He didn't in this game. 22 points, 10 assists, though, in a close win for Memphis. LaMelo Ball, 34 points, 11 assists, 8 rebounds, a near triple-double in a comeback win for the Charlotte Hornets. We'll start with you, Matt. What do you think? LaMelo Ball or Ja Morant? Who were you more impressed by in their debut?
I mean, look, I'm wearing the Memphis Hustle hoodie today, the best G League franchise in the land. But, look, congrats. You beat Utah. Good job. 22-10 versus Utah. Great job. LaMelo took on a much tougher defense in Houston with a lot more athletic defenders, and he was in control of that whole game. He dictated terms throughout the course of that basketball game, including the comeback at the end. And I've been really critical of LaMelo Ball's game, but he was way more mature with how he approached being an offensive engine. And one of the problems is that for as spectacular as Ja is, I think he's the most spectacular player in the league. He had a finish last night that had me jumping out of my couch. He does that almost every single night. But look, Ja's offenses, especially in half court, have been mediocre. And LaMelo's impact has just been higher. So I thought LaMelo Ball's game last night was better. And I think that while I think Ja's a better player overall, considering the playoff success, I think probably they're a lot closer than maybe we thought they were.
And I agree. I think when you look at LaMelo Ball and what he was able to do, that team only had 20 assists last night. He had 11 of those. And while Ja Morant did have double-digit assists as well, that team had 18 assists without Ja Morant. LaMelo Ball led his team in scoring, led his team in assists. Everything that the Hornets did basically went through LaMelo Ball. And I think people have quite often forgotten it's because he hasn't been healthy for a while. The last time that LaMelo Ball was healthy, that team won 43 games. And it wasn't nearly as talented as what this Hornets team is right now. LaMelo Ball had an amazing night. It was great to see, not to take anything away from Ja Morant, but if we're talking about who had the better night, the better impact, LaMelo just impacted the game against a better opponent in more areas. He almost had two rebounds away from a triple-double. Great night from LaMelo Ball.
And both of those teams missing key starters. And so it was nice to see the young guys stepping up and really taking over for both of their teams. And they both got some good contributions from role players, Santi for Memphis, and then Trey Mann stepping up for the Hornets. I'm interested in your takes on this. Like, who has, so that's your take on the debut, but who has more impact on their team's ability to win this season? Who's the closest to their team's MVP, LaMelo Ball or Ja Morant? Haize.
I'll still say LaMelo Ball for now. Now, it does definitely have a chance to be, but I'm still going to see LaMelo Ball. I'm a LaMelo guy. I love LaMelo Ball. I've always loved his game. And I think he's just such a versatile player. And if LaMelo Ball gives consistent effort defensively, I don't expect him to be a lockdown defender. I don't expect him to be his brother when his brother was healthy. But a LaMelo Ball that can be that locks in defensively, just gives that consistent effort for every other way he's able to impact that game. I think he's closer to being the MVP for that Charlotte Hornets team, mainly because the Memphis Grizzlies have other players that can score 20, whatever points. They've done it before. But LaMelo Ball can take that team from being a team that was in the play-in with the growth and progression, and I think they can go as high as the 6th seed this year.
Ooh, that's a lot. Big fan of LaMelo over there. TikTok Haize, like LaMelo. Look, I'm gonna go with Ja. Look, I could say that the debut was better and that it's closer because of what LaMelo can do, but let's be real here. Like, LaMelo's shot selection sometimes is absolutely horrendous, and Ja's got a lot better shot selection. His shots are sometimes wilder, but he's a lot more in control. And at some point, we do have to recognize that Ja's been the best player on a team that's won 50+ games, gotten a top seed in the brutal Western Conference, and won playoff series. Like, there's got to be a little bit of respect for Ja from that regard. Do I think LaMelo can get there? Yeah. And did I love what I saw from him on Wednesday night? 100%. But he's going to have to do that for at least 2 games in a row for me to start putting him on the same level as Ja. I'll take Ja.
Yeah, and to your shot selection point, 10 free throw attempts for LaMelo Ball, only the 8th time that he's done that in his career, and 2 of those times were in January of this year, the last month of his last season. So, he is crazy. Definitely trending towards figuring that shot selection piece out. But Ja Morant, certainly the more finished product right now. All right, let's move back to some injury news, this time in New Orleans, where DeJounte Murray fractures his hand in the Pelicans' win over the Chicago Bulls last night. Here's Locked On NBA Game Time host Nick Angstadt and Camille Davis with more.
One thing about this Pelicans team is that when you look at their bench and it's like, who can come in and replace DeJounte Murray? The Pelicans were leaning so heavily on DeJounte and Herb Jones kind of forming like their defensive backbone, right? You take him out and you're missing a big piece of that. This is a team that was already small. Not that he's a big guy, but when you have a strong point of attack defender, that helps by not letting many people get past you to the rim. So it's going to be a blow for the Pelicans for sure to be without DeJounte.
Matt, how high were you on the New Orleans Pelicans' hopes of competing in the Western Conference before this news, and where are you now?
I mean, I was higher because I was, very much in on them adding DeJounte Murray, but it was for what they do on the offensive end. They still got to solve this roster. That's their biggest problem, is they got to move Brandon Ingram and they got to move CJ McCollum. Like, those 2 guys got to go so they can play Zion with shooters around him. Defensively, I still think they'll be pretty good. Willie Green's been back-to-back with top 10 defensive finishes. He's a good defensive coach. Also, this is extreme Jose Alvarado erasure, and I will not stand for it. GTA is one of the most impactful guys coming off the bench defensively in the league. He is a menace, and they will be fine on that. And the offense, I think, is what's more concerning, because this means we're back to last year where it's like Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson trying to fit together, and those 2 don't know how to make it work. I thought Ingram did a really good job last year trying to feed Williamson more, trying to build chemistry with him, but it's not his natural role. DeJounte was going to fill in as that point guard to make everything come together, and without him, for however long it takes for him to get healthy, I think they're going to be a little rough on that end, even with all the firepower they've got.
And no Zion in the opener either. He was dealing with an illness. So, Haize, are you confident at all that the New Orleans Pelicans can survive? I don't know that we have a solid timetable yet on this injury, but let's just say 4 to 5 weeks without DeJounte Murray. Can they survive long enough to get him back?
I mean, I wasn't confident that they would be able to survive with him. Like, I love DeJounte Murray on this team, what he brings at the point guard position, but what they're lacking in front court depth and size like that, I think that's always something that I looked at that was going to catch up to them. On top of, you can't bet on Zion Williamson to be healthy consistently. So this is a roster that has a lot of things that they need to figure out. And it just got more complicated by losing a point guard that was supposed to help keep everything together. So no, I'm not confident in their ability to stay afloat with this, because we saw this story last year. And while they won some big basketball games. They were a fun team to watch. I just don't look at this team, and I have no confidence they're going to go far and go on any type of run. They could win a lot of regular season games just by the nature of how talented they can be and how many players that they have that could put up points. But as far as like something meaningful, I have no hope in the Pelicans right now.
All right, coming up next on the Locked On NBA podcast, we're going to talk about the Orlando Magic looking dominant on the defensive end and beating up on the Miami Heat, and the NBA released a first look at the new NBA Cup courts. Are they sus or sustainable? That's our first game here on the Locked On NBA podcast, and it's coming up. Today's episode of the Locked On NBA podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time makes buying tickets to your next event even easier. Not just sports. Game Time has great deals on concerts and events too. And with Game Time Picks, they gather up all the best deals and put them all in one place. That's less work for me and more savings for my family. I love it. What I love even more is the all-in pricing feature where I toggle it on and it shows me the total upfront price with no surprise fees at checkout. I don't want to save all my surprises for the game or the show that I'm about to watch, not for my wallet. So Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Thanks again for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. We are only 2 days into the NBA season. It's difficult to tell what's a trend, what's pretend, what's sus, what's sustainable, and that's the game we're going to play today, sus or sustainable. Let's start with a statement win by the Orlando Magic over a lifeless Miami Heat offense. Here's Magic host Philip Rossman-Reich with a recap.
All offseason, all throughout training camp, the Orlando Magic talked the talk. They told us they were going to be a more mature team, that they were going to be ready to compete at the top of the Eastern Conference, that they were going to be a better team than they were last year. Tonight, on opening night, the Magic walked the walk. That was the message Goga Bitadze gave to Paolo Banchero, and Paolo delivered with 33 points, scoring the most points in an opening night game since Shaquille O'Neal back in 1993. This was a historic performance for the Orlando Magic, and one that clearly says this team is ready to make noise in the Eastern Conference. They came to Miami, a place they have not won since, I believe, 2019, and took home a huge victory over an in-state and division rival. But more than that, the Magic got to the suffocating defense that is the calling card of this team, the thing that is going to make this team successful. They showed everyone not only that they can win, but how they're going to win and how they're going to beat you. There's still a lot to clean up, but this was an impressive victory for the Magic.
Only one game, but the Orlando Magic did look very, very good. Haize, is it sus or sustainable?
I think it's sustainable mainly because the brand of defense that the Orlando Magic has played for a while now. Like, that defense is what gives me faith that this could be sustainable for them. Like, yeah, the Paolo Banchero having 33 points, Franz Wagner having 23 points. Like, it's not always going to be as easy scoring for them. And the Miami Heat were working out their new offense. They're trying to work out the kinks of that and how they're trying to operate offense. But we've seen this Orlando Magic defense be suffocating for over a year at this point. They have that brand of defense that it makes it easier in what they need to do offensively night in and night out. And we still didn't even see KCP he didn't hit a shot at all yesterday. So the ceiling is still high for this team. I think that they're still figuring out the offensive end, but the defensive side of the ball is why I think this is sustainable for the Magic.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll say sustainable. The biggest thing for me is they took 49 threes. The Magic? Like, the Magic took that many threes? It was crazy. Like, I was not expecting that from Orlando. I always love Phil's enthusiasm for the Magic. I will say I was impressed with this because the Heat really did own them last year in their head-to-head matchups. And Miami has been kind of like that more experienced team. The only reason I lean a little bit the other way would be that what if this is not about Orlando? What if this is more about Miami and Miami being completely unable to score? Because that team looked absolutely feckless last night. And that's really concerning. If this was it's a division home game, and I'm going to be yelling about this all year. Those are extremely important games. If you want to win 45 plus, you need to win your division games and your home games. Losing both of those, that's a big deal. I think the Heat maybe are more sus than the Magic are sustainable.
Yeah, Jimmy Butler, 3 points in almost 26 minutes of play on 1 of 8 shooting. I think the NBA ought to investigate him for player participation. Also, plus 42 for Paolo Banchero. Sus or sustainable? Anybody want sustainable on that?
If it's sustainable, the other thing is going to be sustainable are his MVP odds, because he's going to be looking pretty good by the end of the year.
All right, let's go to some NBA court fashion. We've got a first look at these NBA Cup courts. I think it's fair to say they were a little bit maligned last season. I feel like in some of the sneak peeks, the leaks that we got online, maybe these were getting a little bit better feedback. But what do you guys think? The NBA Cup courts, I'm going to show one here if you're watching on the YouTube feed, the LA Lakers version. We can take a look at that. So what do you think about these new NBA Cup courts? Matt, are these sus or are they sustainable?
Sustainable. I love these babies. Now, I liked a lot of them last year. The Indiana one in particular was beautiful. The blues and purples look great. The grays and reds, not so much. The reds are really intense, and then that's what a lot of people complained about. The use of the circles on these, I think, is a much better design. A lot of them are really cool. They added like a parquet design to the Celtics one. The Suns one has like this look that it looks like an aura from a sun. There's like just a little details, I think, and these are much less offensive on the eyes. There's just a couple that I don't think will be great, but for the most part, I think these are going to be awesome. As a super NBA Cup fan, I'm even more excited for this year's edition with these courts.
I hate my team's court. I hated it last year. I hate it this year. But generally, I do like them. I think it's much like with the City Edition jerseys. Like you get your ones that just they you see them and it just pops, right? And I think that the NBA learned something from last year. Some of the colors were a little too much on some of them, and I think they've toned it down where they need to, and it complements it. And these are going to be worn when the team is wearing their City jerseys as well. And I think seeing that, and I know we don't have that image ready, but if you look at how the jerseys pop out from these courts, from the leaks that we have so far, that's what really makes it special. I think it's going to be really fun. And much like Matt, I actually enjoyed the NBA Cup much more than I came into it expecting to hate the NBA Cup. And by the end of it, I thought, listen, I had a lot of fun watching the NBA Cup last season.
Welcome.
Yeah,
I thought that the Bulls one isn't, I haven't seen the Bulls one on their social media yet. What's the background color for it?
It's red, but it's more of a tuned down red than last year. Last year was like a really in your face red, and I got to see it in person, literally being in that arena with that City Edition court last year. It was like, hey, I don't know what's going on here. I got to get out of here. So
with Nike being announced as the new extending their deal, and I know that involves like the court stuff would involve a lot more money being invested by Nike, but how awesome would it be to have a black court with the Jumpman logo from Jordan and just do a Jordan NBA Cup court? That would be absolutely sick. That's what Chicago should be going for.
Well, listen, as long as they just TV test these things, because I think that's what they ran into, is that, an image is just going to be significantly different than how the cameras. And I think, sometimes it can be difficult with the different locations and how that comes across on television. So we'll have to see. But I agree with you guys. I think the little details are what make a lot of these work, and the stuff that they're putting in relief on the court. For the Hornets court, it's the honeycomb pattern. Just those little details that make people, that's going to make people feel affectionate about the court in a way that I don't think they really hit the mark on last season. Final one, we'll stay with some in-arena stuff. It was the first game in the Intuit Dome, Intuit Arena for the Los Angeles Clippers. And a lot of people were talking about the wall, which is a section behind one of the baskets where opposing fans are not allowed to sit. It's very sort of soccer-esque or football-esque. And the crowd was wild for an almost overtime victory for the Clippers. And it looked like it even was affecting some Suns in their ability to hit free throws. Kevin Durant missed a pair. It didn't hurt Nurkic as he hit a few to seal that game. But what do you think about the wall? Is it sus or is it sustainable for the Los Angeles Clippers as a weapon, Matt?
I'm going to go with sus because the players will get used to it and they'll kind of adjust to it. And the visiting team being able to choose which side of the court they want to, I think helps too. I will say like the depth perception thing I think is important here because players talked about this in the bubble about why they shot so well. The absence of fans made it to where their depth perception was a little bit better. Like a couple of players talked about that. So now when you have this gigantic wall of people, I think it actually is going to be distracting, especially for teams visiting the first time, but they'll get used to playing there. I think that'll be fine. fine. I think it is sustainable in terms of, is this a good thing for the NBA? Add more things that are different to your arenas. For the love of God, stop building concrete boxes and focusing so much on your suites, and actually make the arena a cool place to go to, because all of these places look the same. That's the best thing about Intuit Dome, is that it is different and unique, and it brings you back to the idea of arenas having an identity. And that's one of the best things about it. We need more of this stuff from these buildings, from these, especially like Ballmer paid for this one, especially from the ones that are publicly funded. This is what we need in arenas, and not as much ways to absolutely extract money from the customers that are already paying too much for tickets.
I'm not going to say that it's sustainable as far as against other teams, but I do think it's sustainable to add something to give a fan experience. That's what I'm going to look at this from. I think it's definitely sustainable for that. You want to give your fans something to come to your arena. You want to give them a reason to buy to want to come there. And so I look at it like that from a fan perspective. It's really fun. I agree with Matt that teams are going to adjust to it. Well, especially Western Conference team. You may be able to hold that advantage over Eastern Conference team for a little while, as they only come in your building once a year. But I think overall, like, this is just something that's fun. It's just something that's fun, and we need more of that. You need something you want something that's identifiable about your arena. And as we've gotten further and further away, where almost every arena in a lot of ways is almost the same once you get in it, I like that the Clippers have something. I don't know how many games they're going to win, but I do think that it's sustainable for the fan experience.
Very quickly, sus or sustainable the Clippers' ability to put a product on the floor the rest of the season. We've got, Kawhi injury, sort of question marks. Their ability to keep the crowd such that they can fill that section and, make it a force. Their chances of doing that, sus or susceptible?
Sus. Very sus.
Very, very. Hold on. Let me take off my glasses. I need people to look in my eyes when I say this on the YouTube
Oh, wow. Hold on. Let's put the camera close.
I need everybody to look in my eyes when I say this. Clipper fans, it's sus. Everything about your whole organization is sus. Every single thing. The one thing that's not, unfortunately, is Steve Ballmer, the owner. Like, he's not sus. I think he's going to invest a lot in the team. But everything about your franchise, from you to fans to the players, everything about it is sus. That's all I got to say.
Strong ending to our first rodeo here on this version of Locked On NBA. If you like what you heard today or what you watched on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed to Locked On NBA wherever you get podcasts, and that includes on YouTube. Make sure to check out Locked On NBA Game Time for recaps on every game every day. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Enjoy tonight's action. Be kind to each other. We'll see you next time on Locked On NBA.